Welcome to today's episode of Beyond the Numbers of Retirement and Longevity Planning. I'm your host, Reed Stone. Alongside me is my co-host, Bob Foley, and our guest today is Gary Foster. Gary is a former executive healthcare recruiter, a portfolio career guy, and audacious ager who now dedicates his time to coaching executives, primarily in the healthcare industry and the issues of midlife career transitions. He has certifications as a retirement coach, resume writer, and LinkedIn profile expert, in addition to over 20 years of career coaching and recruiting. Gary has also been a blogger on healthy aging, but has put his blog on sabbatical for a while. But I believe his articles continue to make for great reading, so I encourage you to go to his website, Make Aging Work, and read some of his thought-provoking articles. So Bob and I thought it would be, we wanted to have Gary on the show because I think, Gary, you provide a unique perspective. And that is, you've been living what a lot of people would consider this retirement phase of life for, I think, over 20 years now, depending upon where you mark that line of retirement. So you've kind of lived this phase a little bit. You've got coaching experience, both working with later life career changers as well as pre and post retirees. So you've gotten perspectives from some others that you've worked with. You've got coach and career training in your background, and you've written widely and read widely on this topic. So you've written, I think it's like 289 weekly blog articles you had written before you stopped writing. You wrote a lot for Quora. So I think your unique perspective will help a lot of people as they think about retirement a little bit differently than what the traditional retirement has been. So welcome, first of all, to the show, Gary. We're happy to have you join us today.
I'm flattered. I'm flattered to be in the presence of this brain trust.
So I wanted to start off with, Gary, if we go back, and I don't know if we go back 20 years or 25 years, just kind of tell us about that time period where, you were probably in a corporate job, you for whatever reason made this shift into retirement. Tell us a little bit about that. And then the second part of that is, back at this time, did your thinking about retirement change? Because I think 20 years ago, the whole topic of retirement was pretty cut and dried. It was work, stop working, and then not do anything. And I think you had quite a unique perspective for retirement 20 years ago. So take us back, if you would, and share a little bit about that time.
Well, I guess I'd have to go way, way back with regard to the concept of retirement. Retirement just really wasn't a thing in my past. I mean, I grew up in small town rural Wyoming, and retirement was never a topic. Now I go back further than most, but in the world that I grew up in, people just worked till they couldn't. Retirement was not really a concept. And I grew up my formative years were in the 50s, so that's way, way back. And I think I carried that forward. And frankly, there was kind of a seminal event in my life. It was in the 80s, the mid 80s, in which and frankly, I have to go back to the fact I kind of bought into the traditional path, I guess. You're supposed to get a degree, get a job, get a wife, get a house, get a golden retriever and a fenced yard and 2 cars. I bought into that sort of thing and began trying to slogged my way up that corporate ladder environment. But there was in the 80s, I guess I found myself kind of immersed in the whole concept of personal development, reading a lot of books. And one of the things, with the backdrop being that retirement was really not much of a concept in my mind, a lot of what I discovered, read, observed was that people who had a real sustained track of success in their life didn't entertain the idea of retirement. They just continued to contribute. Retirement wasn't really a part of what they thought about. And that really stuck with me because, it kind of tied back to what I had observed growing up. So I guess I've carried that forward, and it really hasn't changed my feelings about the concept of retirement. I would have to admit that when I was deeply engaged in the late part of my corporate career, it kind of got a hold of me, the 401k, the IRAs. I actually started an investment club with the idea of really let's put some money away so that we can hit that retirement. But then that faded away as I went through the reality of corporate changes and the lifestyle changes and career changes. And so I guess long-winded answer, but I guess what I continued to come down on was retirement is just not it's not in me. Okay. I consider myself, even at this advanced age, I consider myself semi-retired for life. I guess that's really, where I would put myself because, I intend to continue to work until the universe takes the parts back. Because I think, well, for one thing, it's a key to longevity. I mean, continuing to work, and I think that there are. And I'm going to be careful here because I don't want to completely castigate the whole concept of retirement because retirement is right for some people. I mean, they've bought the concept and it's the right thing for people. But I do think that there are downsides to it, as the two of you well know. But is it for me to call those out? I don't know. I mean, I kind of got into that for a while, as supposedly a retirement coach. But I guess my discovery there was that, I don't know, that's a bit of a solution looking for a problem, but people are going to do what they're going to do. And especially in this retirement age. And retirement is a concept that is so deeply entrenched in people's minds. It's, who am I to try to take them away from that? They have to go through the process of self-discovery to figure out that, hey, maybe this isn't the best deal. Maybe this is something I need to rethink. Maybe I need to do this a little bit differently. So that's kind of where I come down. For me personally, I just don't feel like retirement fits. So that's why I'm semi-retired, if you will. I'm doing what I like to do, that I'm good at, that helps people, and I get paid for it. And that's the mantra that I stick with, and that's the way I tend to kind of finish out, assuming that I still have the physical capabilities. Don't have total control over that. I do all that I can to try to preserve that, but I'm not sure I have the puppet strings that I think I have in that regard. But I hope some of that makes sense. But that's kind of where I come down on it. And I left corporate life at age 60 after 33 years of kind of buying that Kool-Aid. I mean, I had to acknowledge the fact that my fierce internal independence wasn't probably the best match for the corporate world. So I took that drastic step to step away from that, start my own business. I guess honoring that entrepreneurial streak that I thought I had in me, not knowing that I was horribly unprepared to make that move, which put me on an interesting 25-year journey. So,
yeah, and can you take us through that journey, because it's fascinating?
Well, yeah, I think what happened. I mean, I was 17 years deep in my sales career with a company that I guess some of your listeners may remember, a company called WorldCom.
Yeah.
WorldCom was in the telecom business. I mean, it started with MCI in 1985. MCI was an upstart after the modified final judgment where they broke up AT&T, and it was a kind of an exciting journey. You know, that's when the internet began to evolve and a lot of technology developing, so on and so forth. WorldCom stepped in, bought MCI. It just got really messy. And this was that Enron era, some of you may recall. WorldCom was part of that. I mean, it just got messy. Well, to shorten the story, WorldCom was in trouble. Bankruptcy was in the wind. They came to me with an early retirement severance package at age 60. And I jumped on it because I had really been looking into a couple of business ideas that I might want to pursue. And I thought, well, this is great. This is my launching pad. I'll just use that severance and I'll jump in. And I chose to get into the recruiting field. And I figured, what the heck? How tough can this be? You know, I just find a half a dozen or a dozen people to put them into jobs and collect a nice $20,000 fee. I had no idea that I was stepping into one of the most difficult, challenging sales businesses you could ever step into. So I went in ill prepared, and I didn't really build a good foundation for my success, and struggled with that for a while. And I think from that, though, and I look at that path and I think, well, in some ways, I was fortunate because it really forced me a few years down the road to acknowledge that for a long time throughout my life, I had been operating outside of my core talents, my core capabilities. I really had forced myself into an environment in keeping with my indoctrination, if you want to call it that, keeping with tradition, conformity, and all those sort of things. But at one point in time, I finally just had to acknowledge, look, I need to be doing what I'm really good at and what I really like doing, and really kind of what I was wired up to do. And then has brought me to this point where I think I've achieved that. However, I certainly would not recommend taking 20 years to do it, 20 years to figure it out. So, my encouragement perhaps to your audience, regardless of where you're on the life spectrum, is, know who you are, know what really lights you up, know what you're equipped to do the best, and try to pursue that. So how does that relate back to the whole concept of retirement? I think that retirement can pull you away from that. Why would I want to stop contributing if I knew what I was really designed to do? So, I mean, that's a senatorial comment. Take it for what it's worth, but I think that's really kind of my observation. So I don't know, does that answer your question, Bob?
No, it does. It does. And when you take a look at the current situation that we're in, and when I say that, what I mean is, our parents' generation, they took retirement, they sat on the porch, they passed away. All right. How many years that took? Who knows? And they did things that they've always wanted to do, and it kind of surrounded this whole idea about leisure activities. Our generation is different. Our generation says, I don't want to do that. You're not getting me on the porch. I want to continue to contribute. I want to continue to be real. So if you have to give advice to the next generation, the Gen X people, what advice would you give them when they should really start to reflect on what they want the second half of their life to be?
Oh boy. Well, I think it kind of comes back to a little bit of what we were just saying, is are you drinking the right Kool-Aid here? I mean, are you acknowledging really, is where you are really tapping into your full potential? Are you doing this because you think this is what you're supposed to do? Uh, as determined by, I come back to the C's in our life, I think really are something we have to be careful about. Like that's comfort, convenience, and conformity. Do we make decisions built around those, or are we willing to step out of our comfort zone and really test our own abilities, and then check that back against the system that we're in? Uh, so I don't know. I guess if I enjoy, frankly, to your question, Bob, is that I get more satisfaction out of hanging around with Gen Xers than I do with hanging with my age cohort, and I'll probably lose all my friends if anybody listens to this podcast. But I just my kids are Gen Xers, 48 and 50, and I hang around with weekly with a couple of Gen Xers, and I don't know, I just learn so much from them. Yeah, do I impart some wisdom? I'd hope maybe I do. I mean, they look at that and say, well, you're doing something right. You've lived this long and seem to be in pretty good shape, so maybe I can learn from that. But I don't know. I think they have a deeper perspective than we give them credit for. Let's face it, they're the generation that's going to continue to take us along. So I guess my advice to answer your question would be, hey, figure out what you're all about and just put the pedal down, man, because each of us has the ability to influence, to contribute to others. Is what you're doing, is it geared toward that? And I've had some things in my life just recently. I've really gotten kind of, what I would say, enthused. I've been reading a lot in this whole area of Stoicism. And the philosophies behind that, and Adlerian psychology, and that really resonates for me. And I think it's something that if I could impart something back to the generations following me, it would be something along those lines. Control what you can control. Don't get wrapped up in trying to control things that you can't control. And I think probably the most meaningful thing for me today is being successful at living in the present moment. Because if you don't, there typically is frustration affiliated with that. I mean, if you're living in the past or trying to live in the future, it's going to wear you down. So I think that the whole Stoic philosophy and Adlerian psychology is built around that. Ultimately, life is a series of moments, and we need to live moment to moment. And if we don't, we're gonna face some frustration. But ultimately, life gets down to a contribution to others. And so that would be, I guess, perhaps a message that I would want to convey: is what you're doing, is it contributing to others? I mean, isn't that what life is about? And I don't do it as much as I know I could or should and want to. But I do realize that ultimately that's what counts. How much do we contribute to others? Now, I feel like I do that in the work that I do, but I know that I could be doing more. What form that takes. And that's part of my frustration with getting back to doing my blog, because, that was one way that I felt that I could impart some helpful knowledge. It frustrates me that I haven't gotten back to that. But I appreciate your comments about that, by the way. So am I getting anywhere close to what you were asking, Bob?
Oh, yeah, because our generation is kind of the pioneers in the second life type thing. It's almost like we're back in our 20s again, or early 20s, and that's a tumultuous time. Now here we are in our 60s, 70s, and you decide to retire, and you find that you're in this tumultuous area again. And that's what I meant about advice. Some of the things that you went through, just like I went through, Reed went through, as we tried to adjust to this. I mean, we go into it thinking X, and what happens is, as we get into it, we say to ourselves, "Is that all there is?" Because X isn't exactly working out, and then we have to take a look at Y and Z. And what ends up, you do a lot of experimentation, and as you say, you try to give back. As you say, you want to live in the moment, and we should. But one thing that I've observed is the next generation, the Gen Xers, are very, very thirsty to find out, show me the way. Am I doing this right? The whole idea of retirement kind of revolves around the financial side. And of course, what's the number one thing that people fear the most after they retire? That they're going to run out of money. All right. Because they keep hearing about longevity, and they see longevity in a lot of their friends. So anyway, with all of that, what are the things that you have found that have been touchstones or turning points that you had a breakthrough, that you said, I'm going to try this because?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's, wow, a challenging question. It may have been as simple as, it's going to sound crazy, but just on a whim, I wrote an article on Quora, and within a matter of days had 500,000 views. And I'm saying, well, where'd that come from? And it was a simple article called "The Best Anti-Aging Workout." Now, if you know what Quora is, and maybe your audience doesn't, but I mean, it's just it's a platform where you can go out and answer questions that people post out on Quora. So, and it's, I looked at that article and I said, well, wow, what am I learning here? So I continued to write, and I've had other articles that have hit 500,000, 250,000 views or whatever. To put that in perspective, there are 300 million people on Quora. So, 500,000 is like a rounding error. But I guess the discovery for me was that, people are looking for answers to some things that are, the answers are out there. I mean, but they're looking for help. The workout just simply, it wasn't revelatory in what I wrote. It was just pretty much common sense. But other articles, one of the more popular articles is, what should you avoid after 70? And the three things that I said in that article, the three things you should avoid, number one was hanging around with other 70-year-olds. And the second thing was avoid retirement. And the third thing was avoid drifting, because it's easy to do that. So I think that was a bit revelatory to me on a couple of levels. Number one, it told me that, yeah, you're a decent writer. You got some decent thoughts that you can share with people. And the other thing was that, there are lots of topics out there that I think people are hungry to hear about, and a lot of them are really kind of, outside the comfort zone, and nothing good happens, nothing really revelatory happens in the comfort zone. I mean, you got to get out to the edge or get outside of it for things to happen, and so I think that seems to be kind of what people relate to. So that was, I don't know, doesn't seem like I have a lot of substance, but that's one thing that was revelatory. It acquainted me with the fact that people are thirsty for certain things. I have some thoughts that would seem to contribute, and I think it reinforced the fact that I do have some skills in the area of writing, and I've translated that to doing what I do now, which is helping executives, healthcare executives, put together their story in the form of a resume and a LinkedIn profile, and perhaps doing some coaching along those lines. But so I guess that's my best response to it.
Oh, it's great. It's great. And Reed, I know you have questions, so why don't you go ahead?
So Gary, I want to go back to, you were talking about finding what really kind of lights us up, I think you're saying. And if we can identify what we're really passionate about, what we are good at, that really kind of removes some of the barriers I think that a lot of people have around retirement. They make that decision, I think, a lot of times because their job is not fulfilling in many cases. So one of the things I wanted to see if there's any connection between, because I'm guessing you're coaching a lot of healthcare executives, people, and they're probably mid-career, late career, trying to find a new position. They come to you. So they're kind of right in that late career retirement kind of planning stage too. And are you finding that, what we talked about on the retirement side of things, finding something that lights you up? Are you having any conversations with these people about that? Because I'm guessing all of these people that come to you, they probably aren't completely fulfilled with what they're doing. They've been doing the corporate job for a long time. They're probably making a lot of money. They could continue to make a lot of money, but they also could shift into doing something that's more fulfilling, maybe an opportunity to give back more by doing something more fulfilling. So have you ever had to connect that with any of these on the career coaching side? Have you had any discussions with these people, or have they asked you about, finding something that they're a little bit, that lights them up more than the career that they're doing?
There
Or are you
hasn't
finding,
been.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Well, there hasn't been a lot of that, and frankly, I guess I'd have to honestly say that I've really kind of avoided going there
Okay.
with these folks, because you've characterized it correctly. I mean, the folks that I deal with, and I got to tell you, and that's why I say in the healthcare space, these are incredible people. Across the spectrum, because most of the people that I dealt with over the last year, for example, have been C-level executives. So this could be a COO or CFO, CEO of a hospital. Or more recently, I have been dealing with a lot of physicians who are in executive roles or want to go there. Okay. They want to step away from the clinical practice and get into a hospital administration. These are some phenomenal people. Unlike what I've experienced, say, in other industries. Okay. In terms of their commitment to what they do. Now, invariably, because they're typically in their 50s into their 60s, they are big money people. They make incredible salaries, and I would say probably 50 to 60%, maybe more than that, of the people that I've dealt with have been introduced to early retirement. They've been caught up in a merger, an acquisition, or a reorg. A lot of that going on in healthcare right now. But I don't hear them saying, I'm ready to retire.
Okay.
Now, retirement may come up and they'll say, yeah, I think I can probably do this. And sometimes I'll ask the question, well, how much longer do you want to do this? You're 62. How much longer do you want to do it? Oh, I don't know, maybe another 8 or 10 years. But they don't seem all pumped up about the idea of retirement because they're so dedicated to what they do. Now, they're in a horribly busted system. I mean, our healthcare is just an absolute unadulterated mess. But they continue to forge on, trying to change it. So I don't know. I think my marketplace that I deal with is a little bit different. They don't seem to be as motivated toward retirement. Now, Do I know people if they do retire? I don't think they're inclined to head for the beach and bocce ball. I think they're more inclined to say, okay, how can I continue to contribute? Because I think the reason they got into healthcare to start with is because they were givers by nature. And it's an environment in which they can continue to give. So I don't have a real good answer to it. I don't do healthcare executives retire? Yeah. But I generally think that they tend to try to find a way to contribute to the industry because of their love for it, because they're givers by nature. And I think they also acknowledge the fact that they got to keep trying to fix this busted system. So,
So that's what motivates a lot of them is they still enjoy healthcare, and they're now viewing it probably as much as getting into it. They got into it to help people, but now they're still in it because they think they can not only help people, but they can fix the system, or at least try to.
yeah.
So they're still engaged in what they're doing, and that was part of my question was, are they getting burnt out from being in the healthcare industry for so long that when they come to you, yeah, they're trying to take a step up, the next step up the ladder in healthcare, but maybe some of these people are wired to do something a little bit different. And it sounds like some of them are, where they want to move from practicing medicine into being more of the administrative, on the administration side of it. So,
Well, physicians are an interesting group because what I've encountered over the last year is that um, there certainly is a burnout factor going on. We're burning our physicians out, and I don't want to get off on this tangent because I could get soapbox this to death. Um, but the message I'm getting from some of the physicians that I engage is that they would like to find a way to be a bigger part of trying to fix the system because there is often and always has been kind of this gap between physicians and the administration of the hospitals. So we're seeing, I think, a bit of a trend. Maybe some people would disagree with this, but I think there's a bit of a trend of more physicians moving into hospital administration, which to me makes perfect sense because they bring the clinical aspect of it that an MBA from Harvard doesn't have. So, how long that trend will continue or if it will continue to accelerate, I don't know. But I tell you, engaging these physicians, they are incredible people. I mean, they are so quick and they are so smart and they don't have time to, they just don't slow down. I mean, and dealing with them when I'm doing these projects, they challenge me to keep up with them and the way they think about how we're putting this story together. So I don't know. They're probably not a good example of someone that thinks along the lines of retirement, if you will.
yeah.
And I think generally more so within the healthcare field in general. And that's a generalization. I imagine a lot of people out there would disagree with me on it, but that's really my observation.
With a large aging population, Gary, are any of these people talking with you about how healthcare is going to sustain a very aging older population in the next 20 years? I don't know how, I guess what I'm asking is have they talked to you or shared with you their thoughts on that? Because I don't know how we're going to support an aging population that's going to need various levels of healthcare.
Wow. You sure we're going to open this open this can
I
of
was just
worms?
curious. I was just curious if these people that you've worked with, if that topic has ever come up, because I think that's one of the issues with healthcare is not only is there not enough people going into healthcare, but there aren't enough people working on the geroscience kind of side of the industry to support this aging population. And I always wonder what does that look like in 20 years? What does the care look like? I had two parents that went through assisted living and nursing home care and palliative care, and And so I just wonder when there's so many more people kind of in that system, how we're going to, how we're going to support them. So I was just curious. I don't want to get off on a tangent either. I just thought maybe some of the people you'd talked to had talked about that, or maybe you'd brought up the topic to them. I know you've written about that, I think, on some of your blogs before about,
Right.
staying healthy and the advantages of that. But man, with the, all of these baby boomers that are now getting older and older when they get to their 80s and 90s, and I just don't know how we can't just house everybody. I don't think that's the longer term solution. So there has to be a different, and it's probably a multi-pronged approach. So just
Well,
curious on your any thoughts you'd have on that.
now I think that anyone is, whether it's a physician or a hospital administrator, is intensely aware of this tsunami that we're in. And I think I could speak for most of those people saying we got to do something. Okay.
Yeah.
But this system is so, I mean, let's face it, we started wrong. The model is wrong. The incentives are wrong for us to do what we know needs to be done. And this ship is so tied. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get off into an editorial here, which is dangerous. But this whole system is so tied to the government and the insurance companies that the people with the right hearts and minds with regard to, okay, how do we take care of the tsunami, are encumbered by that bureaucracy, by that model. It's extremely difficult to do the things that we need to do. And frankly, yeah, Reed, I have to almost go back and say, oh, we're a little late to the game to make the changes.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do, and this is really a deep-seated feeling on my part, is that, okay, how much time do I want to spend talking to someone like myself at 83 years old about making lifestyle changes? Okay, it's probably got some value, but would I not be better off if I reach back to that 50-year-old that lives a couple of doors down from me and say, okay, let me help you wake up to where you're headed. You're at a turning point in your overall life cycle in your late 40s or early 50s. And you need to start making some fundamental decisions that you probably haven't made up to this point. I mean, I'm living proof of it. Maybe the two of you are as well. I didn't do a lot of really good, smart things health-wise up until into my mid-50s. Actually, more like my mid-40s. But I think that's who we need to reach. We can continue to emphasize to my cohort at 83, it's not too late to make some lifestyle changes. Do all that you can to make these remaining years as comfortable as possible. But in so many cases, I hate to say it, it's a bit too late. So, yeah, I would continue to try to, but, at 70 and 80, this is a little bit like concrete up here. Not particularly receptive to new radical ideas, right? I think we still continue. And for me personally, it's so easy for me to get into the lecture mode with people, especially on my age cohort, and they just don't want to listen. So the only thing I can do is just try to be an example, and maybe my example would influence. But I do think you and Bob and people like myself do have a message, and I think we need to start getting that message into that midlife group, 40s and 50s, and say, hey, look, do you know what you're facing? Or I mean, you could be at that midpoint of your life. You could have another 50 years ahead of you. What do you want those to look like? And are you thinking about the right things? i.e. your health. Because if you haven't, I can tell you in your late 50s, early 60s, things are going to change. It's just going to happen. How serious are those changes? That's critical, because I mean you both know that our record in this country is dismal. I mean, the statistics are alarming. The majority of people are going to experience 20 years of chronic illness as they head toward the end of their lives. So why is that? Well, it's because of decisions we made 20 and 30 years ago. And some of those are irreversible. And that's, to me, an alarming, and that's what we're contending with. I mean, that's that tsunami that we're dealing with. So we have a system that is really the only choice we have within the system is to try to treat that. But we don't have a system that's geared toward going back far enough to avoid it happening. Because prevention in our system, if prevention were predominant in today's healthcare system, the healthcare system and the pharmaceutical industries would collapse. So then we come back around to politics and all that sort of thing, because I mean, the Greeks had it figured out, 2,000 years ago. They understood the importance of prevention. We don't. Ours is all about fixing it. We know the cure. We just don't know the prevention, and we don't want to teach it because the business model is not built on prevention.
Yeah.
I got on my soapbox. I'm sorry.
No, you stay right on that soapbox, because, when I look at even my own life, I look at my primary care physician, I get 2 20-minute time periods with that person twice a year. That's it.
All the way up to 20 minutes?
Exactly. And
I thought it was supposed to be 15.
and the reason why it goes 20 minutes is because I ask too many questions.
There you go.
And then he just gets up and walks out. Okay. So he's not walking out because he's mad at me. All right. He's getting up and walking out because he's time too. And the overlords that are watching him want to keep him on the straight and narrow, because time is money, right? And you're so right about that.
Well, I mean, you just described the business model, Bob, in spades. I mean, that's it. And it's unfortunate. But I think, doesn't that tell you, though? I know this is where you're coming from, is it means that we have to take control of our own health. I mean, you got to be the CEO of your health. And so what's involved in that? Well, then it has to start with some knowledge. I mean, you understand, how does this thing work? I mean, how do all these parts work together, and what should I be doing to allow them to work better together? And so I think, I remember a physician saying, the biggest problem we have in our healthcare is individual naivety or lack of understanding of our very biology. Would we do most of the things that we do if we fully understood our biology? Would we take that left turn into a McDonald's if we knew what that was going to do? Or, would we continue to drink alcohol if we knew that it was absolutely, totally a poison? I don't know. But then you come back to the comfort, convenience, and conformity issue, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, we've got an incredible challenge, and if we're gonna let's count on the government. Let's count on private equity, all these sort of things to solve the problem. The problem lies within us individually, to take control of our lives, be knowledgeable, know what we should and shouldn't do, and build the habits around that. And if we don't, that we'll end up in that group that has 20 years of misery as they wind up their lives. So you guys get it.
That's a good place, I think, for us to stop. Gary, any final thoughts before we end our conversation today?
Well, age is a number. all we've got's today, really. And to me, that's probably the most profound thing, is that I could so easily sit here and reach back into my past and drag up all the goofy, stupid things that I did. Or I could sit here and fret about what the future holds. Good heavens, in today's political environment, can't you just totally go crazy with that? Fret about that. So, and it's difficult to do. It's just bring it back to today. What can I do today? And how can I contribute to somebody today? How can I be grateful for what I've got today? And just know that really what I need to do is get through today so that I've got tomorrow. And then don't take it much beyond that. But I do think at the core, you need to have a purpose. You need to have a goal. You need to have something that you're striving toward, because you can't just drift through this, but you got to have something that you really want to go. And frankly, for me, I just said, okay, look, I'm 83 years old. It's no big deal. I just want to be the very best there is on the planet at doing this career coaching, resume development, career profile development for high-level exec. Well, not just high-level executives, anybody in the healthcare field, a healthcare professional. That's what I like to be the best at. I like to be known for that. I want that to be my brand. So then it comes back to, okay, so what can I do today to get me there when I have to do something a little bit? Maybe I can get 1% better today at doing it. I wish I could make that happen. I don't every day, but there are some days when I move it forward 1%. Most days I don't. But I think, unless you're in the present moment, it just opens the doors for so many negative things in my estimation. But know where you're going, have a purpose, stay focused on that purpose, and just try to move the needle a little bit every day. So I guess that's where I'm coming from.
That's a great message for all of us, Gary. I'm going to pull up Gary's contact information in case you'd like to get in touch with him. So I've got on here Gary's website, his Turning Point Career Services. Again, I would encourage people to read Gary's blog, although he hasn't added anything for a while. He's got great articles on there. You can connect with Gary on LinkedIn. Got his contact information there. You can email him at his Gmail account or there's a contact form on his Turning Point website. Feel free to give Gary a call. His phone numbers are also on his Turning Point website, so he's pretty easy to connect with. I would encourage anybody in the healthcare industry that's looking at or needing to make a career change to reach out to Gary. Gary, any thoughts on any of the contact information here?
No, it's all there. Thank you for putting that together, Reed. No,
Absolutely.
I just want to say as we wrap up here that I appreciate you too. I really do. I appreciate what you're doing, Reed and Bob. I'm flattered that you would take this time to talk to me and allow me to share some thoughts. I hope there was a pearl or two in there somewhere, maybe not, but nonetheless, I do appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the way you guys think and the work that you're doing. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the next episode when we continue exploring retirement and longevity planning beyond the numbers.